Engaging boyhood. Engaging boyhood. This morning, I want to, there's a book written by a famous Jamaican woman. I forgot the woman's name now. But it states, "The Mother That Fathered Me." And this book it is making its rounds, and some folks think it's a beautiful talking point. And I want to say that's all it is, a talking point. There's nothing like a mother fathering a child. And I want to stop to say that, and God is not your daddy either. I see a lot of you have borrowed things from the Pentecostal and say, God is my daddy, or God is not your daddy either. God is your father. Because father carries with it not only a noun, but not only adjective, but it's a verb also. So when we speak about daddy, we are talking a nickname, a fun name, a name where children will be taught to call their father. But to see big men and women in our church singing about God is your daddy, oh, it upset me. God is not your daddy. God is your father. Our text of meditation, Colossians 3:21, said, "Fathers, provoke not your children to anger, lest they be discouraged." Now, children, when the Bible speaks about children, the Bible is speaking about boys. In fact, the word for boy and the word for children in Hebrew is the same word. It is so because in this agrarian society that the Hebrews were, men were the most important thing for a man, because the more boys he had, the more workers he had for the factory. So boys were important. Men kept their boys until the boys were 40 years. In fact, they kept the boys as long as the boy can work. Men get rid of the boys when the boy began to say, well, back pain, because the machinery are breaking down. And then he will go look for a wife for his boy. On the other hand, his daughters, as soon as she comes and she says, "Tanti in tongue," he began to look for a husband for her. And there was a reason for that. The reason for that is that girls, when a girl reaches that age and she is married, they will sleep on a white sheet. And if in the morning after the sheet is still white, somebody will send to the father, say, "Come pick up your daughter." So to avoid that, as soon as a girl reached the age where he believed hormones will begin to run crazy, he began looking for a husband for her, because of the honor that a virgin had. So while he's keeping his boy until his boy reached 40 years, 45 years, until he began to say that back hurting him, thigh pain, he's getting rid of the girls early. And because the girls are being removed at 12 and 13, what happens, a man has a daughter that crosses the age of 16, 17, he takes her and offers someone who already had a wife. So what happened, these men have 5 and 6 and 7 wives, not because they were kinky or anything like that, but because it was beneficial to that society. Because a woman, 12 years, 13 years, 14 years, if she stays 20 years with him and he has 6 of them, he have over 100 workers. So it was economics while they marry them as children. But we have long gone past that, right? Or some guys still want to hold on to that. Well, we need to understand that children do not grow in a vacuum. We are creatures more so of our environment. I always say to folks that I have never seen a dog barking. I was in China in 2015, and I saw those dogs, and those dogs bark just as the dogs are in Trinidad bark. I didn't hear one dog barking in Chinese. You see, human beings are creatures of their environment. We learn what we see in our environment, what we hear, what we can touch. These are the things that create that learning for us and create our very being. If I take a dog, I always give this illustration to my class. If I take a pup, and I place that pup in a home of children, 15 children, as many children as you can think of, and those children are laughing and jumping and playing and doing all these things, that pup will not grow up to laugh and play and jump and do all those things. That pup will grow up to be a dog also. But if I take a child, however, and I place a child with some pups, and that child will not grow up to be anything more than a dog. That child will bark, that child will roll and scratch, that child will walk on his hind, that child will run after the cat, that child will challenge a bin, because we are creatures of our environment. You understand that, right? And because we are creatures of our environment, when we look at our children, we must understand that their learning has to do also with their environment. And that's why God said in Genesis 18:19, he said, "For I know him," meaning Abraham, "that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord." I want to stop to say something. God knows all of us. For him to say, "I know Abraham," he's more speaking about Abraham's response to him. You got what I'm saying here? He's saying that Abraham knows him. Abraham understands the ways of the Lord. Abraham knows what God requires of him as a man. And because he's saying that Abraham knows him, he's saying because Abraham knows him, then Abraham will grow his children in the way of the Lord. You see, it starts not so much from what you want the child to do. It starts more with what you ought to do. You understand what I'm saying here? And because God said he knew Abraham, then he knew also that Abraham, because Abraham was walking like God walked, he knew that Abraham's children, his sons now, remember I said the Bible is speaking about children. Everywhere you see the word in the Old Testament, boys they are speaking about. Okay? When the Bible wants to speak about a girl, it uses the Hebrew word nama, or naya, meaning girl. That is never used when the Bible say children. Are you with me? The whole issue, you see, when God created man, I want to say this, God did not stood there with a coin and toss the coin way up in the air and say heads man, tail woman, and it fell on heads and he said, "I will make man first." It didn't happen like that. It was God's intentional will to create man first. And he created man first for a reason. Are you with me? Am I saying something? Good. A child, a young boy, goes through 3 major stages. The first stage is what we call the ritual passenger, whereby the child is born, he can hardly see. His seeing is blurry. His hearing is very fuzzy. And he can hardly control his being. That's a child. After a month, these things start to improve a bit. He's hearing a little better now. He's now turning his head very slightly. He can now keep his head up if he's lying on his tummy. He is going through a period, but he doesn't even know that he's separated from his mother as yet. Are you with me? He's still running. By the second month, the boy began to coo a bit now. He's trying to imitate. Now he's beginning to turn now. But he still is, if you take him there, even if he's a Chinese boy, and you take him all the way to Mumbai, he will grow up an Indian. At that stage, he doesn't know who he is. He's just turning, and he's hearing, and as he began that process of hearing, he began to imitate things. By 3 months now, he began to recognize himself, but he's in a world of unknowing, a strange and tragic place. And that's when it's important that you begin to teach him. Horton Curry said, "We are who people say we are." At that point in time, there is no identity now. So Horton Curry came up with the idea of a looking glass self, whereby who people say I am, that's who I become. So in that stage, that first 8 years, as Ellen White said, 7 years, but in that first 8 years, you are training that child to be who you want him to be. You know, there's a very famous statement. It is made also in the church. You can make the children, but you cannot make their minds. That's a lie. That's a lie. You can make them, and you can make their minds also. At that stage is where you begin now to tell the child who he is. At that stage now, he's looking for things that look like him, more and more. And all human beings to him will look like him. He is still searching to see what looks exactly like him. And that's why a mother cannot father a child, because she doesn't look like him at all. Well, some of them do. But I mean in a real sense. In a real sense I'm talking about. She cannot look like him. So this is the point where you are training the child to act. And I want to say, if there's any psychologist in the house, I'm going against your theory. This is where you train the child to act. Because out of acting, the child gets his thinking. Thoughts do not just run into your mind and the child begin thinking about all sorts of things because things were dropping into their mind. No. You are taught to act. That's what the Bible says. Train up a child in the way he should go. Meaning, in the way he should act, in the way he should behave. You tell the child things that you know is really important to his existence. You are socializing the child to behave in a certain way. Because you will not be with that child all the days of your life. You will not be going in the highway, on the playground, in the classroom. So you are training the child to act. And it's out of how you have trained that child to act, he begins to think. You understand what I'm saying? Thinking is not a property that is a natural phenomenon. No, it's not. Breathing is natural. Going to the outhouse, natural. But thinking is a way that you are trained to do. And those 8 early years is where you train the child to act and behave in a certain way that when the child starts to venture away from you in a primary and secondary school, he already has a method of acting, that out of that method of acting, he can now think. I remember I was an apprentice in TN Tech, staying in the boarding house, 9 boys and myself. Teenage years, 17. The year when, and I will come to that stage, that liminal stage there where you don't know where you are. And one night, those guys brought home a prostitute, Dr. Andrews. They put their money together, and all of them hired a prostitute. And I am in the boarding house, and I'm sleeping. I never saw my daddy going clubbing, so I don't know anything about clubbing. Fete, drinking. So I'm sleeping in the boarding house. These fellas come waking me up. Browne, we want you to go outside because we hire a lady. Crazy. Are you crazy? I don't know anything about that. I was at the stage and the age where I supposed to respond in a certain way. But because I was taught to act in a certain way, my thinking pattern couldn't go so far, Elder Balgobin. I just didn't have the capacity so to do. And those are the stages, what we call that ritual passenger stage, where your child can go anywhere if they are not taught to act in a certain way. The father, the child is looking, if there's a boy child, he's looking for something to resemble. He doesn't know. He cannot tell you about his confusion. He cannot tell you about what is happening in his life and in his mind. But you ought to know because you're trying to shape an individual to be something. Are you with me? Because the child never asks you to come by here. And the least you can do is to give him the best that you can. Because after that stage is where the confusion begins, in which we call the liminal stage or the transition stage. And that's from the ages about 8 to 18 to 19, but more so from the early teenage years, from 13, whereby the child doesn't know, is betwixt and between. He doesn't know if he's a child or if he's an adult. And you also feed that, Elder Murphy, you also feed that into his mind. But when he acts in a certain way, say, boy, behave yourself. What do you think is a man? And then when he tried to act like a child, he said, a big boy as you acting like a little child? So confusion began to reign in his mind. And he doesn't know if he's going or if he's coming. And there's no help from his father or his family because we also don't understand. And friend, I want to do as what Pastor St. Hill do. I want to ask God forgiveness because I didn't know either. But thank God he was merciful and my boy turned out okay. But as I look at the whole boyhood and boyhood training, I recognize how tragic it could have turned out. Because there's something that God holds us when we are ignorant to know. You know that? In the midst of our ignorance, Pastor Sam, God, he holds the thing together for us and things work out and we say, oh, we were wonderful parents. Wonderful, my foot. God stands up for us. And he brings the whole thing through when we hardly expect. Are you with me? The ritual stage is that transitional stage where he's searching for something. But those who are adults are not understanding him and they are treating him in a certain way. And he becomes distrustful of them. And then he dare not want to go back to be a child. One thing we do when we are 7, we say we are 8. When we are 8, we say we are 9. When we are 10, we say we are 13. But after a while, when we are 50, we say we are 49. You see, there is a stage. There is a stage where the young man is looking for something. And he's trying to be an adult, but the adult, they are not accepting him into their cocoon. So this is the time when he is stronger with his peers. He looked for people who look like him and think like him and talk like him and see the world like he does. And that's the time when we have the most trouble with them. And we have books being written. Teenagers are from Mars and all sorts of things like that. Forgetting they're at a betwixt stage when they are no longer child or adult. And there's no condition for that. There's no label for that. It's something that happens and it is difficult for us to deal with. Therefore, that's when the father comes in. If you were not a friend with him before, that's the time that you ought to be friends. That's the time when you ought to talk about football and basketball and cricket together. That's the time when you ought to drive together. That's the only time when you need to teach him about the trials you have. And always tell your children about your trials. But make them know that God at every turn has found a way out. Give it to him real, because when you fail to do that, he comes to the place when you recognize that you have lied to him all along, and he becomes more distrustful of you and all those who are adults. So you step it up at that period of time. It's the liminal stage. You know, at this stage, the boy, he doesn't know where he is. His peers are more influential. They are more the in thing. They are more, they speak his language. And at that time, he cannot see how you can fit in. And sometimes you just ask him, what is this about? Ask him about the language. Make him your teacher in the way that you know what is best, but you are trying to let him be your teacher while you are really trying to get him to be your friend. Are you with me? And once he believes that you are not reading down his back, he will tend to open up more and more as you open up more and more. They call it the liminal stage. It's a stage where the father's intervention is most important, because it is the stage whereby the young man doesn't know who he is. You have given him an identity at first, and make it be a positive one. I should spend one minute on that. What you tell your child, he will believe during that first stage. So if you say to the boy, you are so bright, you are brighter than everybody in this house, he could be done as what he will think he's brighter than everybody in the house. And then they speak about self-fulfilling prophecy, you know. Max Weber talk about interactionism. When you interact with people, whoever you interact with, you become more and more like them. Whatever is told to you as you interact with that thought become more and more part of you. So you begin to tell the boy everything that you think you want him to be. He might be bad like Yaz, that the people say. You tell him he's a good boy, but he could get much better than he is. He could be doing the most ugly things. You tell him, you're a nice boy, but you could get nicer. Never allow negative to be at any part of your training of that boy. And he will grow up with self-confidence. So you taught him to act, and he grew up with self-confidence. Remember, the only God he will know for that first 8 years will be you. You will be the God. And once you're a father, he sees you as the one to give him all his instructions. And once he trusts you like that, you know you're on the right. But before he trusts you, you must be like Abraham. God must be able to say, I know him, that he will instruct his children in the way of the Lord. And then we have the ritualized incorporation, or the third stage, the ritualized incorporation. Here is your son who would have received a new identity. He's not a child. During those teenage years, the betwixt and between years is where you give him that new identity. And he returns back into society now as an adult, but a well-rounded adult. An adult that you can be proud of, and nobody in blue and gray will be knocking at your door in the night. You'll spend less time outside the courts. And I want to say something. Everywhere I go, I say this because it's becoming a joke among Seventh-day Adventists. You need to send your children to schools where they will have Seventh-day Adventist friends. You see, friend? Their friend in the night, on Friday night and on Saturday night, while you are sleeping or you and mama are having a chat, they are talking to on Facebook, and on Twitter and on Instagram. But they are talking with friends who are telling them about going to Zen and Marshall Monday and MX Prime. And that's the talk they are having. And what they did with their boyfriend. And that's the talk they are having. You see, so when you are speaking to them in the Sabbath school and the preacher is preaching, they have friends. They can't hear you. So the way to deal with it is to eliminate or minimize the friends that they have that do not believe what they believe. And the best way to do it is to try to make sure that they're in our schools. I'll get that flashing light, but I will give this illustration to tell you how it is. How our school is different. I was lecturing a class in UE, and those girls were coming with all kind of half-clothes. So one came well-dressed, LGBT, well-dressed. So I said I will tell her something nice so the others will understand that dress is important. So when she walked up to me, Doc, I said, how you dressed up so nice? You coming to meet me or what? And she said, without any flinch, without any but, without any pause, she said, if I was coming to meet you, I would have walked with the rest closed. So I recognized the ball spinning on 20 flight. So I'm going back in my crease. But the point I'm making, she did it in front of the class. Because the mindset of most of them were like mine. Yeah, it would not have happened on the hill in Maracas. Even if she felt that way, she never would have said it. And first, I want to say to you, you need to protect your children. Stop putting them in harm's way. Because if you want to guide that boy, you want his heart to lean towards God, if you want him to walk the way you want him to walk, then you got to make sure it happens in whichever way possible. Yeah, our schools are not the greatest. But I'll tell you something. God says send them there. When they do not turn out how, I have someone to blame. Let me rest them there and let God do the rest. And friend, I stand here this morning still, as a parent who have done just that. Done just that. And I have absolutely no regret. Absolutely no regret. Friend, it's a process. I saw we can talk. I got the lights. I don't want to read one text because the lights are on me. I want to read one more text. Bible said, but if anyone provide not for his own, and especially for those of his own house, he had denied the faith and is worse than an infidel. And this is not only goods and services, friend. It's training that child to join the army of God. It is our purpose, friends. Remember the early years, 1 to 8, the child is finding identity. He's looking in the glass. What you say is who you think he is. Remember when you leave that stage, you get to that betwixt and between stage where he doesn't know who he is, and you got to make him know who he is now. He doesn't know, he's not a man, he's not a child, but you make him know that he's in that transition, and you're going to make him a good man. And then he comes to the place where he is a man to return to the society. What is return to the society is what you have cultivated. May God bless you.